What up? What up? What up? What it do, snackers and snackettes? Gage and Coop here to discuss with you this most recent episode 5 of Cloak and Dagger from Freeform. This episode is called The Princeton Offensive. Coop, before we even go too far, what are your overall impressions of the episode? What are you thinking?
It seemed a lot of things were moving fast. I think they try to put a lot into this episode.
Okay.
Like I said, I had to watch it like 3 times to try to catch things that people had talked about that I completely missed. And I mean, and other people said that too. It just seemed like it was like a lot put into this in this particular episode. But I mean, overall, it was good. You know.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, let's start at the beginning. So we open up the episode with Tandy going over the papers and files and so forth that she took from Greg's office, the lawyer that her mom was seeing that got murdered in the last episode. I found it kind of strange that they didn't touch on that at all. I mean, her mother wasn't even in this episode, so kind of wondering where that's going to be.
Sure.
Somehow I felt like between Tyrone ended up in the police, department at some point, and him being introduced, well, not necessarily introduced, but I guess pointed towards the same officer that talked to Tandy before, that somehow there might be kind of a connection made, or that it would at least come up, but it didn't even come up that he was murdered in an office building in his own office and it was set on fire.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. But nonetheless, we open with her going through those files and kind of putting things together and doing the puzzle pieces thing. And I mean, look, at this point, all the different names that pop up and the different people, it all seems kind of random. Like, it may not even really be important to the grand scheme of things, but I guess it's just kind of there to give you the impression that she's figuring things out.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I did find it interesting that she kind of did her investigation, and he's back at school, and then she shows up in his school.
Yeah.
At his locker. Like, how does she locker is? I mean, don't get me wrong. She's apparently some great investigator, whatever.
Yeah.
She could have just asked, like, somebody in school. Right. She's the only person in the building who doesn't have a uniform on. You know what I mean? It's like...
And the way schools are nowadays.
The way schools are supposed to be nowadays. It's a little odd. But look, let's suspend disbelief. We're talking about people who can teleport and, make light up daggers or whatever, right? But anyway, I did find it a little funny that she shows up at his locker. And she's like, "Do you guys have a computer lab?" Like, they got a computer lab. How come you couldn't get into the computer lab? Nonetheless, right? They go into the computer lab and like he logs in, and I'm thinking, don't all schools like track who's logged in and like what stuff you're looking at?
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, she's just on Roxanne's website, so I guess it wouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like, it'd always be like, "Oh, I'm doing a research paper on," whatever. Like, it would seem. But anyway, it was kind of interesting though that she kind of hung around to watch, I guess, what with the pep rally thing and him, kind of, like her seeing this other girl and kind of getting this idea of like, oh yeah, she's got money. I can use her to make it look like, what I need in order to get into these soirees or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot going on in this episode, right? there's a lot going on in this show. And I do feel like we've talked about this before, I think, with other episodes, but I do feel like we're at the halfway point basically now, and we're kind of going to have to rush things a little bit, I feel like, because we only have like 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And so a lot has to happen in the next episodes to avoid the kind of cliffhanger that I think would make people really upset.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And like the fact that we're episode 5 and Cloak doesn't really know how to use his powers yet.
Right, until she tries to murder him by pushing him over the side of a railing. What?
Yeah,
like,
we're lucky that worked.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I mean, I guess we kind of knew it had to work.
The death of Cloak
But
on episode 5.
Right, exactly. The show is now just Dagger. Yeah, I mean, look, she again at the end of the last episode seemed to gain an understanding of how to make her powers work, or at least go through something traumatic enough to get a better understanding of how to will her powers.
Yeah.
And you know, he needs that same thing. So I think, I guess to an extent, this episode did that.
Yeah.
What I found in,
I'm sorry, I feel like he got the concept, but it's like not like, you know, not the way she got it, you know, of, you know, using the power.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference is that she intends to use her powers, and he seems to not really want to. You know what I mean? Like, he's not, I guess, interested in finding a way to utilize them to do something for his advantage.
Right.
I think the way the episode ends is the thing that will push him to do so. We'll get there in a second. I thought, you know, early on it was cool that finally his powers had taken him somewhere when he was looking at the picture of his brother and his friends.
Yeah.
Took him somewhere that wasn't threatening to him for like the first time.
Yeah.
You know, for him to meet this dude, Wayne, you know, again, who Wayne clearly recognized him and has been keeping tabs or seen him or knows who he is.
Right.
Even though, you know, Tyrone hasn't seen him, I guess, since his brother was killed, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. That was weird to me at first that they were okay with him just teleporting, but I guess I was like, I guess he could just walk into his workplace and just be like, "Hey, what's up?" If that was the case.
Well, I mean, I also found it interesting that they threw in there, you know, that he said, "Oh man, you know, somehow you must have known I was thinking about you," you know, or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Again, kind of digging into what it is that actually make folks' powers work.
Mm-hmm.
And how that's in tune. And I'll be honest, I was a little confused when he does get to the basketball game. It's a big deal. They're in the finals. And when he ended up with Tandy at the event that she was attending, we'll call it, that he blamed her for using her powers and that being what was making his powers act.
Well, yeah, because I think that she was getting overwhelmed by touching people and, you know, learning all this information and everything.
Right.
My only guess is that when she is like in some type of, not necessarily fear, but when something's going on with her, then it automatically triggers him, maybe. You know?
That it makes him feel like he needs to be near her or something like that. Like, I don't know if it's a defense mechanism that is there to actually try to help him protect her, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think. I think this is a protection thing.
Sure. Could be. I mean, he she didn't seem like she was in danger, you know what I mean, or that she needed help, but
well, yeah.
I guess, you know, again, I just think it's interesting that, I don't know, I guess somehow he knew, oh man, you must be using your powers because it's making my powers go crazy and we're connected, so it must be something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where I don't recall it being that like that being a thing in previous episodes.
Yeah,
And
that's
like,
true.
I mean, I get
Well,
the idea that they're
I
connected or
guess
whatever,
when
but
what was it, the second episode or the third one? When he teleported to her when he was about to shoot the dude.
right.
So I don't. Maybe that was another way of how of how he teleports to her. Well, maybe he was scared that time or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just because she wasn't, it's not like she was using her powers at that time. You know what I mean? So I mean, nonetheless, I mean, what I want to say is that I like some of the themes that the show is going after in terms of, Tyrone being like the black guy on this team,
Hmm.
on this basketball team.
Okay.
And like it's kind of weird because they didn't play it up until the game actually started that like they're playing an all black team that I assume is from a not so well to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and that first reaction when the referee, calls him son and he gives him basically an unfair call.
Yeah.
And then he touches the ref and finds out that the ref is afraid that they're gonna break his fingers if he doesn't,
Right.
that he was threatened.
Hmm.
He needs to call this game in their favor. So I don't know if we'll see more to do with that or not. But I also kind of find it funny that like he himself was like, nah, I'm basically the sixth man when he was talking to Wayne in the shop,
Hmm.
that he owns. And he's like, nah, that's not true, or whatever. But the team seems to kind of treat him like that. But then at the end of the game, when it's down to the last second and he's getting ready to take that shot, and it's like you can hear the announcers going, "This is the guy whose hands you
want this
want the
guy
ball to be in."
exactly. And it's funny because like his mom
Wayne.
was making him seem like he was that good of a player, like better than his brother. Wayne did the same thing, kind of in the beginning too. Right before when they were lining up, the player beside him was like, "Yo, big game today, like you got it." Like he was giving him the okay, like you got this.
Yeah, he was, but he's the same bastard that beat him up and locked him in a room. You know what I mean? Like I'm really waiting for Tyrone to haul off and destroy one of them dudes or all of them dudes or something, or Tandy
Yeah.
to do it or whatever. But I'm wondering whether or not one of those guys' father or something like that is going to be one of the people who's responsible for like telling the ref to call the game a certain way or whatever. You know what I mean? That like
Yeah.
maybe it is. I mean, they're all supposed to have money and be rich or whatever, but maybe it's like, my son's future is riding on this and he better get a scholarship, whatever.
Right.
And I put money on this game, so you better call the game this way, or, just whatever it is. Could just be we better not lose this game to a bunch of negros. You know what I mean? They're just trying to keep it, keep it 100.
Hmm.
I think it's interesting that they continue to kind of push those boundaries as far as like the racial,
Hmm.
that divide of kind of like being on the opposite side of the tracks for the two of them. Again, her running into him and bringing up, that he's the school and he's a kind of a preppy choir boy, kind of whatever, and she's kind of living the rough life, blah blah blah. Hey, what do you think about this officer
Oh
who
gosh.
was
Look.
getting getting wee in the back of the cop car? That's an
Yeah.
interesting introduction for this episode for her.
Yeah, it's like I don't really like like what her goal is, I guess, for the as her as a character, but like the introduction to her, she was quiet. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then it was like mysterious. Does she have powers? I don't know. Then you find out she's just a cop. She's just a detective, and she's doing her job.
Yep.
But now we're in her personal life as if it matters. Like I don't know.
I mean, it might, right? Because it seemed to me that the officer that she was relating to, we'll say,
Yeah.
who was also the officer that she was talking to when she was kind of digging you know, for information about the Vice Squad and like when the drugs kind of came off the street and stuff like that. Like he seemed really adverse or put off by her line of questioning. And I'm wondering whether or not the relationship that she has with him is going to cause some kind of an issue or problem. Like if she feels like she can trust him, or maybe he's friends or something with, you know what I mean, with the other vice cop or whatever. I was wondering at the end of the episode, was she really busting these lines of cocaine? Was she really doing these lines, or was she just like pretending so she could kind of get in good with him to try to figure things out? Because to me, it looked like she was just getting down. Yeah. But then for him to catch her, you know what I mean, or whatever, and then them have the conversation they did, and her kind of establish, well, you know, I'm this cop from New York, whatever, and him to say, you know, I wasn't sure about you, New York, but we might need to get down. When she walks out with the smile on her face, like, yep, got him now. I'm on the inside. I can do this undercover. I worked narc for 2 years. You know what I mean? Yeah. Kind of a thing. And her little backstory of, you know, whatever was all something to do, you know, done to kind of convince him. You kind of have to wonder whether or not was she actually doing those lines, or was it all just kind of like, you know. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm not exactly sure where it's going to lean, but we know it's going to be important nonetheless, to the overall, you know, feeling of this, to the overall story itself. And we know it's going to be important, and the role that she plays is going to be important, and that she's now tied to both Tandy and Tyrone. That's interesting. I lost your visual. Yeah, I don't know what you did. Okay. Nah, okay. I mean, you know. So I is that the hopes and dreams of some of these Roxanne guys that Tandy was coming in contact with, getting some under the table activity.
Yeah, it took me the second episode to realize it was the same dude that all these guys had the vision about that she was touching, which was the top guy.
You mean your second time you watched it?
Second time I watched it, I realized that was the same guy. You know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna need you to pay attention a little better.
But what I noticed too was that the visions that she had before, when those people's hopes, they were kind of like direct. Like you knew exactly, they said exactly how they felt, things like that. But these seem a little more metaphorical than others. And I was wondering, like, was that just something that how they shot it, or
I don't know. Mean compared to
her touching the
Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is that they specifically shot the stuff with the people who work for Roxanne in that same like office kind of a setting for the most part, right? That they were in that enclosed glass. And I think that the difference, at least for me artistically, is that when she touched Greg to find out his hopes and dreams were, his hopes and dreams included her. Whereas these are not people who know her. And so she's more on the outside.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like she's on the outside of the glass kind of looking in, and their hopes and dreams are something that she's spying in on. But with him, it actually did include her, which is what really kind of made her think, all right, you know what? This guy actually might be, I think he really is a good guy, because from what I can tell, based on what I know about my powers and how they work, this seems like an honest depiction of how he feels.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think that's more of it.
The main guy, the Roxanne guy, when she touched him, and his hopes and dreams were just terrible.
Peter Scarborough gentleman. Yeah, just kind of like fishing for money. I'm gonna get this money out of this water one way or another. Yeah, that was real interesting. And I thought to myself, like, okay, she picked up this one helmet and wiped the thing off, and the guy's name on it. So it's like, okay, clearly that's important. Ivan Hess.
Hess. Where are you Russell from? I don't know. But
Yeah, I don't know where you got Russell from either. Yeah, Ivan Hess. So I clearly figured, okay, whoever he is going to be important. But then to see that at the end of the episode, the young lady who was talking or was filming another commercial like the one they opened with at the beginning of the episode, the commercial was the daughter of him. And I think it was important to recognize that, like, okay, when he died, you know, they paid for everything, they took care of me, I even went to school and I continued his work. And I think that for Tandy, it is, well, wait a minute. When my father died, Roxanne did everything to bring us down, took everything from us, took all of our money. What makes this girl different? Why did they help her? You know, the show opens with this gentleman who's like, when I was injured, blah, 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 you know, they took care of me and now I work with them. Now I work for them, you know, whatever. And it sounds like he was injured probably in the same accident, you know, that her father was trying to prevent from happening.
Right.
And then this girl who, you know, obviously we don't know anything about her yet because we were introduced to her at the end of the episode. But, you know, with her being the daughter of this other gentleman who was killed or died while he was working for Roxanne, you know, they swooped in and took care of her and her family. So I think the question is going to be why, and she's going to really need to lean into this young lady to find out what that is, or, you know, why that happened. Or maybe that she knows or remembers things or has information that obviously Tandy didn't have. Now, I don't know how Tandy got on the set of this young lady's
I thought about that too.
Commercial.
I thought about that too.
Like, bro, she's the ultimate creep, bro. Like, you would think that Tyrone would be the ultimate creep. He's the one that can teleport, you know what I mean, and kind of be where he wants. When he teleports to the event that she's at, after teleporting a basketball there, by the way, like out of thin air, and then, you know, she's like, "What are you doing here?" Like, well, wait a minute. A few minutes ago, you were at his school, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" You would think he would be the creep. She's a creep, bro.
Yeah, and even when she went to the little the escort thing, and she had an Instagram popping already with like 17,000 views, I was like,
I need her.
Yeah, maybe she was
squad.
maybe that was from a previous case she did where she needed a high Instagram follow.
All I know is there were a lot of pictures on her Instagram of her in some fancy outfits and in a lot of places, and I'm not so sure what that means, but maybe that was an alias, that she already had or something. Who knows? You know.
Yeah. The girlfriend, Tyrone's girlfriend, she's I feel like she knows exactly who and what Tyrone actually is. You know.
No way. Not at all.
It's too creepy, man. It's too creepy for her to be like, I watch you, or like, I know, like, I pay attention. Like, she said it.
Well, she is, but I think that it's more of the fact that I think part of what they're doing is she's black and he's black. And so she's supposed to have an understanding of like things that he may see or be going through that other people in the school will be completely oblivious to, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And so, you know, her showing up in his room after the game, after they lose the game at the last minute with the shot that he's shooting where he's supposed to be the guy you want in his hand. And as soon as he let it go, I was like, oh, that's way off. Like, that's good. You know what I mean? And I also want to say that this referee who was supposed to be, I guess, paid off to make sure his team won, clearly did a terrible job. Like, why are they up by a point with like a second on the clock? Makes no sense. Anyway, you know, every time he touched one of these athletes that he was clearly crossing over, like, I don't understand how at the last minute, like, all of a sudden my man had all the moves from NBA Street. My man had all the NBA Street moves, the most unstoppable cat ever to make it to the court. And every time one of these guys touched him and he got an idea of like what their fears and stuff like that were, you know, like the first dude, his daddy's beating him. Like, oh man, what is going on? And then, you know, it just kind of necessarily did a great job of setting it up. But I feel this idea from the very beginning, that the first interaction with that first referee, where it was kind of like, okay, clearly you're racist or something, right? Like you are not, you know, you're making calls against the other team for this team because of who this team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're not being fair. And her showing up in his room and essentially insinuating that she was paying attention and that she knows that he threw the game on purpose to get those guys a championship because he knew something wasn't going right, that the calls weren't being made fairly and so forth, and that he felt that as the black player on the all-white team that it wasn't just. And so I think that's all she was really saying, is that like, I pay attention. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of here with you on what it is. You don't necessarily have to say it. I get it. I feel like I would have preferred if they talked about it. Like, let's sit down, let's talk about it, because clearly there's some racial things happening here. But instead, she took his jacket off and, well, we're not talking anymore. I wouldn't have ended up there either.
Yeah, I mean, it was like she said it the first time, and I was like, okay, you know. Well, the second time, the way she said it, she's like, I pay attention. And I was like, oh, something's up. Like, she, like, it was just weird to me.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think that she be in tune to things that other people might not be in tune to, just because of the whole voodoo thing and whatever, and her aunt and whatever. And that appears to be, based on what they've shown us of what the upcoming episode is going to be, something that may come into play. It has to come into play at some point, obviously. But I don't know that she is or will be specific, like knowledgeable about what his actual abilities are. I wouldn't be totally opposed to them at some point, her being involved in something and him having to save her or something like that. But I was also, again, I've said it before, I'm waiting for that. Why this white girl always around you? Who is this chick that keeps showing up? You know what I mean? Like, I pay attention and I remember her from the first party when you ran after her, whatever. Now she's everywhere. And I was certainly expecting it when she showed up in my man's school at the locker, that the other girl really, you know what I'm saying, hooked up with him.
I was definitely waiting for that.
I was totally waiting for the show up moment. What do you think made Tandy not stab my man in the neck when she had the opportunity, standing behind him while he was changing?
No, I don't know. That was weird. Maybe she was like, this dude is sick, and maybe, I don't know, it needs to be, maybe I need to like put him in jail or embarrass him. Maybe this is too big for me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like even though maybe she recalls him now having been one of the people who, like, the person who orchestrated them coming in and taking everything from them, that she doesn't necessarily think that maybe he is the top guy that maybe orchestrated everything or put it all together. There's maybe somebody still above him or somebody else that he answers to, and that she's not the answer she's looking for without that, which is why after touching him, it kind of was like, instead of me stabbing him and Assassin's Creed, and going Assassin's Creed on, maybe I should get the information first from him and find out what I can find out. And when she did that and got that name, that must have told her, okay, there's more to this. You know what I mean? Than him. Yeah. And so now I guess we'll find out in the next episode, how it leans. Overall, I dug the episode.
Yeah. And another thing. At first, I was thinking like, they're pretty easy to kill. I mean, not easy to kill, but they're ready to kill. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tyrone's ready to shoot the dude, no problem. She's ready to stab dude, no problem. But I mean, I guess like they've been through a lot. So she lost her father, he lost his brother.
I mean, I imagine that you know, I guess given the given the right circumstances, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not just I lost my father, I lost my brother. Like, she seems to believe that her father was murdered. Right? That, like, you know, when he looked at her fears and so forth, and he can see them showing like these Roxxon people essentially, you know, murdering her father in front of her, that she believes her father's murdered, and she wants to get maybe the person responsible for it, and she's willing to do what it takes to get that information, especially now that she has her powers. Like, she's the kind of person who has always been the kind of person that takes advantage of the opportunities that present themselves, and these powers are an opportunity for her, which she seems to keep leaning into. While Tyrone seems to be leaning away from that opportunities maybe don't just present themselves, and you shouldn't necessarily just jump on whatever opportunity is there. You know, I think that with him and his brother, he maybe tried to jump on an opportunity that he saw as something being available, and his brother saying, nah, that's not how we do things, you know, to him, when he's like, all right, look, we're going to the radio back. You know what I mean? And that's what led ultimately to his brother getting killed, that he feels a certain amount of guilt, but he also knows that this person, he watched this person kill his brother, and then he was made to seem like he was just a dumb kid who didn't know what he was talking about, because all of a sudden this is an officer that doesn't exist.
And
you know, and
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, and I guess the only thing we didn't cover was the ending, when the officer and Wayne were talking to each other, and he teleported back to the warehouse.
Right.
Yeah.
You said that didn't make sense?
No, it did make sense. I said I guess that's the only thing we haven't talked about so far.
Yeah.
Because he noticed the watch, and I guess it was like nice watch, you know. But he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm you know, renovating houses and everything." But he was like, "Well,
right.
I don't know, maybe the watch actually came from the drug dealing he's been doing with the cop and everything." So,
I mean, yeah. I mean, he definitely picked up on it when he talked to him the first time. You know, but I think even more important is the fact that he knows that the cop shot.
Right. He was like, "You shot my boy,
Tyrone's brother."
Right.
Like, so that makes it even bigger. It'd be one thing if it was just like he just so happens to be working with this dude, moving drugs, whatever, and that he's a dirty cop.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing for it to be that he knows that he shot him. And so then the question becomes, was it something done on purpose? Did his boys know about that? Did they feel like maybe his brother was going to squeal on them, or, you know what I mean? Or something like,
yeah. And I guess
whatever we're doing.
I guess next episode, it looks like they were actually hanging out a little bit. So I guess maybe Tyrone does some investigation, asking a few questions to Wayne, you know, like, you know, what do you remember about that night or whatever. So,
where he trapped my man somewhere in the trap, and maybe do some damage to my dude. You know, look, it is what it is. You got to go get those questions answered, bro.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how Tyrone gets out of that situation, or if he just walks up, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like, since he's there now, like, it ended with him being there. I'm just glad he didn't disappear while he was getting that good that night. And I also, you know what? There's something about Tyrone, moments where he seems like really timid and kind of like, you know, I don't think that's a good idea. We shouldn't do this, whatever. And then there are moments where he says the kind of things, and I'm like, are you even the same dude? Like, when he says to her, like, you don't have to go. She's like, nah, I don't really think you want to explain me to your parents. Like, what is he thinking?
Yeah.
Because I know I'd have been like, hey, Slim, you got to get out this window right quick. Go back the way you came. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah.
But you got to go back the way you came, and I'm going to start locking my windows unless I know you're coming. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Call me next
I
time.
also think, hey, listen, say one other thing about some of the fakeness of how this show tends to go. I like the show overall. But I know, right, that, like, if I was him or if I was his parents, we are having a conversation about this game. Like, you're not just going to go in the locker room and not come out of the locker room, Your parents have no idea where you are or
Yeah.
what you're doing or what's going on. They're not looking for you. All of a sudden, you're at home. As far as I'm concerned, my man teleported home, which somehow was slower than it took her after she waited in the locker outside the locker room for him. He took the long way and walked home. So either he actually did that, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm thinking he teleported back. You know what I mean? He gets home, opens the door, walks in the door. But I guess he must have teleported, I would think, directly to his room if he could control that. But I would think that his parents would have had to have a conversation with them, that they would have wanted to say, look, man, you gave it your best, you blah, 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's all good, whatever. Not like my man was just kind of like, yeah, nah, come downstairs, have breakfast. Like what? What's wrong with you? You can't do that. I mean, maybe that's how it is where they live.
I don't know. But like you said, 5 episodes left. It looks like the next episode is pretty action packed for this show. And I guess, like you said, there's a lot of things we gotta catch up with for it to only be 10 episodes. So maybe from here on out, we start to get a lot of action going back and forth between both of the situations.
I certainly hope so. I'm looking for, these last few episodes to really tie things up pretty neatly. Again, it still feels a little bit rushed, but I like where they're going in the direction that it's heading. I don't feel like they can slow down. I almost want them to slow down a little bit, but I feel like they can't. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think about this most recent episode of Cloak and Dagger. By all means, drop a comment below. Make sure you hit the ding-a-ling bell so you know every time we post these new episodes, as well as all of the remaining stuff. We have tons of stuff we post all the time. Still posting stuff from All-Star Comic-Con. So make sure you're looking out for that. Coop has some concessions he does sometimes, so look out for some concessions.
I do a few concessions,
a few things, some top 10s, some top 7s, top 5s, some best ofs. So make sure you're looking out for those. We appreciate you tuning in and checking us out. With that, we're gonna close this one out. Toodles and loos.